Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 713 Houston Sportcast. I am your host, Ruben Calvillo, and I have a special guest. You could hear him weeknights from 7 to 10 on ESPN Radio 97.5. Mr. Patrick Creighton, welcome to the channel.
Hey, Ruben, glad to be with you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. You dropped an absolute bomb yesterday that still a lot of people don't know what happened, talk in regards to jjwatt not only having a hand in the Clowney trade, but also potentially affecting the DeAndre Hopkins trade as well. Can you tell the fans what exactly happened?
All right. So, and listen, I know that there's people out there who, don't necessarily understand what we're talking about. And they kind of think that I'm saying, well, JJ walked in and said, you got to trade these guys. And that's not what happened. But what was going on was before last year, you'll remember that before he was let go, Brian Gaine had said he wanted to make J.D. Clowney the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And, he obviously got let go and, he wasn't there very long. And then the Texans tried to tell us they had this GM by committee, which was really Bill O'Brien telling everybody else what to do. And they couldn't come to an agreement. They franchise tag JD. They can't get an agreement by July 15th. And now, even though, once July 15th passes, that means he's got to play that season on the tag. It doesn't mean they can't work on a future deal. It just means they couldn't do anything for this year. And this is the 2019 season. So in August, apparently, J.J. Watt got wind of what the Texans and JD were talking about, numbers that had been bandied about and what JD was looking for in a long-term deal. And he wasn't real happy about it. He felt that he was worth more than J.D. Clowney. So he went to the Texans and he said, look, if you're going to give him a deal that's going to have a higher average annual value than my deal, I want a new deal.
Wow.
And basically, he kind of put it on the Texans. If you pay JD, you got to pay me again. And J.J. Watt, of course, in a situation where he had multiple years, no guaranteed money, but multiple years on the deal, kind of the same situation DeAndre Hopkins was in. So you remember the beginning of August last year, they were talking with Nick Martin, and they made a deal with Nick Martin. They were talking with DJ Reader. They couldn't come to a deal with DJ Reader. Think about it. They could have signed DJ Reader for $10 million a year before the 2019 season. He just got over 13 to go to Cincinnati. So they could have got him at a lesser price. And basically 4 days after JJ goes to the Texans and says, if you're going to pay him big money, you're paying me big money. That's the first time we get public wind of the Texans and the Dolphins talking about a deal centered around J.D. Clowney and Laramie Tunsil.
Yeah, that's
true. The first deal that we heard was back on August 12th. It was J.D. for Tunsil and a third. And then later on, a couple of days later, the 15th, it got out that the Texans were asking for a first and a third for J.D. Clowney. And Tunsil, of course, being a former first-round pick, would have satisfied that in that deal. Now, before last season, JJ had originally gone to the Texans and said, hey, he wanted a new deal. Now, keep in mind, he was coming off of a healthy season. And if you're JJ's, I said this last year, if you're JJ's agent, and he just had 2 seasons where he was hurt most of the year, and then he has a healthy season, it's like agent malpractice for you to not go to the Texans and say, hey, we want a new deal. We want guaranteed money.
Yep, that's true.
So originally, he was not looking for some kind of big raise. He just wanted his money guaranteed. Then he found out about JD, and that's when if you pay him more than me, you're going to give me a whole new deal. So then at that point, DeAndre Hopkins finds out the Texans and JJ are talking about a new deal. And Hop is in the same boat JJ's in. He's got multiple years, no more guaranteed money. Hop's way underpaid. He wants a new deal. And the Texans tell him, no way, no how, no chance, get to step in.
Wow.
So Hop, who had already expressed frustration with the Texans in January when they get beat by the Colts in the playoffs, he wasn't happy about the team's direction. He wasn't happy necessarily with some of the coaching staff. Now he wants a new deal. Like, hey, JJ's been hurt 2 of the last 3 years. I play every day. I'm the guy who's carrying the team. Talk to me, and they wouldn't talk to him. So he gets angry. He says, fine, trade me. So he played all the 2019 season.
Pissed off.
Ticked off, wanting a new deal, and demanding a deal. Demanding to be traded. And here's ultimately how this works. Because the Texans basically, and I've always maintained the idea that jjwatt is the one guy who's Bill O'Brien proof. Like JJ's the one guy Bill O'Brien can't just, all right, I'm going to trade you for like 5 cents. He's the one guy he can't do anything to. Because they couldn't say no to J.J. Watt the way that they said no to DeAndre Hopkins, the way they said no in the past to Dwayne Brown. They felt pressured. They felt some pressure of, hey, if we're going to pay Jadeveon Clowney, we're going to have to pay J.J. And then if we pay J.J., we're going to have to pay Hopkins. Because how can you, if J.J. is going to be upset that Clowney's making more money than him, and he's going to demand a new deal, we got to pay J.J. And then if we pay J.J. with multiple years left on his deal, how do we tell Hopkins, no, it's Texans policy. If you've got multiple years on a deal, we don't negotiate. Well, we just did it.
Yeah.
So they kind of painted themselves into a corner with their own words and then made the decision. Like, no, they could have paid everybody. It wasn't like they didn't have the ability. They could have paid everyone, but they made the decisions not to. And part of the decision-making process was JJ throwing his influence around.
You know, that is very huge because, you know, this season could have been totally different if JD was still on this team. And now we're without, you know, probably one of the best wide receivers in the league. This really looks bad on J.J. Watt because, you know, all of Houston known him as a high character guy, someone who is a leader. You also spoke about how you know, your people have said how J.J. Watt hasn't been that good of a person inside the locker room. Can you speak more to that?
Well, you know, look, J.J., he's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's earned a lot of privilege. He's earned a lot of benefit of the doubt. That being said, there is a lot. There's been sentiment in the locker room, according to multiple sources, that JJ over the last couple of years has been seen a little more as a selfish player. Now, you gotta remember, JJ, when he's on the field, JJ is kind of allowed to freelance however he wants. You know, other players can't do that. JJ has always been afforded the ability, hey, you know what, if you want to freelance, if you want to, you know, do something on your own, you see something and you think you should attack it a different way, he's always been given that latitude. And when you're healthy and when you're wrecking teams' offenses and you're, you know, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, you get a lot of leeway and you guys are kind of cool with it. When you're doing that, but you're not staying on the field, and you know, guys start getting the idea you're more concerned about your own stats and your legacy than you are about the team's success. That's when guys start to look at him and say, you know, JJ's a little bit more of a selfish player now. And selfish player are the exact words that were used by multiple different people that I talked to. And it is of note because, you know, Bill O'Brien is a guy, he wants to be the only king in the castle. There can't be any leaders other than Bill. JD and Hopkins were both highly liked, highly respected guys in the locker room. When they spoke, people listened. And everything that we know about Bill O'Brien, you know, especially, you know, came out with Hopkins getting traded. Well, you know, he was a big locker room presence. Bill O'Brien wants like that college locker room where he is the only voice. Nobody says anything. He's the king and everybody else is a serf and they live in his kingdom. So from that aspect, not necessarily a surprise. JD and Hop both out the door, and it's all these little things just keep coming together to give us the broader picture. The more we peel the onion back and get a look behind the curtain, the more we see the actual operating ideals of how this team works. And, well, they're not necessarily good. A lot of this is not real well thought out. A lot of this seems to be very reactionary. I don't think it should be lost on anyone that in trading DeAndre Hopkins, and look, if the Texans wanted to trade DeAndre Hopkins, they didn't want to pay him, and he was mad or whatnot, that doesn't mean you had to trade him for peanuts. And the fact that they dealt him like 4 seconds after they were allowed to make a deal, clearly they didn't try to get the best deal. The GM of the Eagles had made a comment. He said, what we were told the cost of acquisition would be and what the actual cost of acquisition were two very different things. And no, they didn't get a chance to match or better or anything like that. So it does seem that it all came together very hastily. And okay, first deal that we like, bam, done, gone. And just like they did with JD, they traded DeAndre Hopkins for very little return. And that can never be a successful business model.
Yeah, I mean, like at all, a lot of us were wondering why those two were dealt for so cheap, and now we know why. And just now does this mean that JJ is gonna try to get a new contract in a couple years, or is he done? Or
well, like I said, JJ was asking for one last year. They didn't come to an agreement on one, but then he missed half the season, so now his bargaining power is low, and you've got whatever the damage from, COVID-19 is going to be to the NFL this year, that he now is kind of in a position where he's got to be healthy for at least the majority of the season and be really productive if he's going to get a new deal. I can't see the Texans paying him nearly $18 million next year if he spends another half season or more on injured reserve. I mean, it just doesn't make good financial sense. And for a team that's going to have, look, they're going to have to, do a deal with Deshaun Watson soon. They've got to make decisions. They've got to make prudent decisions, which they haven't really shown the aptitude of. But they're going to have to pay Deshaun Watson. And, they're kind of now in this situation where, they got rid of JD, they got rid of Hop. And next year, they could be looking at a situation where they're going to have to either redo or release J.J. Watt with that huge number that he's due, especially if he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that is huge because J.J. Watt is such a huge person for this Houston city. How does this make him look, if like more comes on about how he was been called a selfish player, how he's had a hand in, two very good players, moves out of Houston, it doesn't make him look good.
It's weird because this is not the image that people have of J.J. Watt.
Exactly.
That's what the more shocking part of this is so many people think J.J., squeaky clean image. Here's a guy who raised all that money during Hurricane Harvey and just seems to be like a big kid who just loves playing football, shuts his mouth, does what he's told, never speaks out, never speaks up. And, this is, one of those sides of business where, maybe he felt that this was his time to try to use the influence. And look, J.J. Watt has earned the right to use that influence. You're an all-time great player, all with one team. You've been, loyal to the team. You've earned that privilege. It was just a strange time for him to exercise it. And then in the manner in which he did, we don't look at JJ and say, man, JJ has got this jealousy thing going on with JD Clowney, or, JJ's about the money. Like, nobody thinks of him like that. And this is a kind of a peeling back of the onion. JJ's a guy. He's a person. He has the same feelings everybody else has. He's not a robot that just goes out there and plays football. For a long time, he certainly was a robot, and I think the fact that we've seen him break down 3 of the last 4 years is a kind of result of the fact that he played banged up, beat up, through injuries, every snap for so long. Your body can only take so much beating. And, for JJ here, this is a different side of him that I don't think a lot of people have seen before. And so there's a little shock value to it. In reality, look, every athlete wants their money. And I never blame a guy for wanting to secure the bag, right? Your career only lasts so long. You get all the money that you can. I will never give any athlete grief for wanting to get paid. They should all get paid.
Yep.
But I did think it was very strange the way that he went about it, of kind of pitting himself against JD Clowney. When you think about, if JD's healthy, that takes a lot of the load off JJ. And believe it or not, the guy who has the injury history tag is JD, and JD's the guy who's been healthy. That's the weird thing. Think about how all free agency long, it's, I can't. People saying they don't want JD Clowney because, he's got this injury history and the bad knee and whatnot. JD has been a lot healthier than JJ. It's not even close.
It absolutely, to me, it seemed obviously selfish, right? Because you're preventing another player to get his money, and a player that, was one of the best run defenders against the run, and our run defense just took a plummet this season. It's very, disheartening. But with all this going on, does that rule out the possibility of the Houston Texans bringing back a Clowney with J.J. Watt here?
Well, I think that there's long history of Clowney and O'Brien not seeing eye to eye. So that is a very unlikely reunion, because Clowney and Bill O'Brien, they don't get along. It's weird because
he drafted him.
Well, how the Texans, they're very protective of players. They were always very protective of JD. Now, JD is a great dude. He'll talk with you, always friendly, always inviting. But they were very protective. They did not want people talking to JD because they were afraid JD would speak his mind and not follow the company line. There was a year at training camp, I was talking to JD on the field, and we're just talking, and all of a sudden, Texans PR runs up, grabs JD by the arm, and starts dragging him off. You can't talk to him.
Ooh.
Well, why not? We're on the field. That's the policy. You talk to whoever's on the field. He's on the field. We're talking. You can't talk to him. And they dragged him out. And he was just like, sorry, I'll get you next time. And it just, unfortunately, there's a lot of that went down. And like I said, JD, terrific guy. And I would say there's a better chance that I suddenly grow to be 7'2" and become center for the Rockets tonight than there is a JD coming back to Houston.
So before I let you go, Mr. Crane, how do you think this season goes for the Houston Texans? Brand new OC, brand new DC, brand new weapons.
I don't think the offense is going to be all that much different, because I really don't see Bill O'Brien giving Tim Kelly 100% full autonomy. I'm sure O'Brien's going to have his hands in the mix somewhere. Tim Kelly's going to call the plays until they have a bad game, and then Bill's going to be all up in his, over his shoulder and whatnot. There's a lot of chatter, former players saying, they talked to the current players last year, and that, in practice, all the exotic plays, all the creative stuff was drawn up by Tim Kelly, and then on Sunday, O'Brien just wouldn't call it.
Yeah.
So whether or not they really give Tim Kelly full autonomy to run the offense, I think remains to be seen. I'm not trying to put down Brandon Cooks. I think Brandon Cooks has shown you he can be a really nice receiver. But he's a guy coming off of a year where he's had 2 concussions in a month. He started the year out as wide receiver 1. He ended the year as wide receiver 4 and a decoy. Snap counts were cut in half. He was running basically 2 routes. And he was a decoy. I hope that he's over the concussions and that he's able to be the guy that we've seen him be in the past. Brandon Cooks has 5 concussions that are documented in his career. That means we've got no idea how many undocumented. That's an injury risk. Randall Cobb got let go in Green Bay because he had been injured several years in a row. Production was falling. He had a nice little bounce back year in Dallas last year. And remember, Dallas #1 in the league in yards per game. So he had a nice bounce back year last year. I hope he can continue that. Will Fuller, I like Will Fuller. I wish there was some way we could merge Will Fuller and the $1 Million Man and make him half bionics when he stops breaking.
Yeah.
Fuller, when he's on the field, is a terrific player. He's not on the field nearly enough. And those are your top 3 receivers. That's a lot of risk. You got a very expensive running back who hasn't been good since 2016. He's had injury issues. He's been ineffective. I know he's played behind some pretty lousy lines the last couple of years, but he's very much a reclamation project. So there's a lot of if and a lot of maybe and a lot of we'll see. Could they be really good? Yeah. Could they be a disaster? Also, yeah. And I think the disaster component is a much higher percentage than I would like it to be, than I think a lot of fans would like it to be, than it really should be. Yeah, you got rid of a guy who is an Iron Man to bring in a couple of question marks. It's risky. Look, they're going to play an offense. The style of offense should look different. They should literally, my partner Jason Braddock calls it a NASCAR offense, where they're just going to be high speed all the time. And you can play that way as long as those guys stay healthy. That's a massive if.
Yeah, well, just one thing for sure is that we're going to be watching. I'm excited. It's football. Mr. Crane, thank you for coming on, and thank you for, giving us a peek of like you said, behind the curtain, because, this is pretty big for, the Golden Boy. A lot of people call him the Golden Boy. So thank you so much for coming on and showing the fans what really is going on. Thank you so much.
Man, I appreciate it. Anytime, brother.